Speaking of George Santos, another one of his, I don't know if you want to call it scams or dishonest bits of activity, was using a Jewish sounding name he felt would cause him to get more donations when he set up GoFundMe's from Jewish people. Now, let's dive into this. Very interesting stuff here, this time from New Republic. George Santos used to go by a Jewish last name to better scam donors to his made-up animal charity, according to a former acquaintance. Gregory Maury Parker, who said he and the New York representative were roommates for a few months, told CNN's Anderson Cooper Tuesday that Santos had gone by Anthony Zabrowski at the time. Quote, he would say, "Oh, well, the Jews will give me more if you're a Jew," and so that's the name he used for his GoFundMe's. And this discussion between Santos's former roommate and Anderson Cooper, I have for you. Take a look at this. And then a second part of this interview is also very interesting.
Who is this guy and how long has he been this way? Joining us now, a one-time friend and roommate of his, Gregory Maury Park. Gregory, I really appreciate you being with us. So you knew him as Anthony DeVolder from 2013 to 2018. How long did you actually live together?
We were only roommates for a few months. And I also knew him as Anthony Zabrowski.
So you knew him. Why did he say he had two names then?
Well, he used Zabrowski for his Friends of Pets United, his GoFundMe. And he would say, "Oh, well, you know, the Jews will give more if you're a Jew." And so that's the name he used for his GoFundMe's.
And what was he having GoFundMe's for back then?
He had a pet charity, Friends of Pets United. It was supposedly to help out with, sick animals and things like that.
So that was the charity that he used to convince the disabled veteran that he was the right guy to help with raising this money. And also that charity, there's no record of it with the IRS, and so we don't even know if any of the money he was raising was actually for pet-related things, for an actual pet charity, because that charity is not an official charity at all. It is stunning. And before we get to the second part of this interview that's pretty interesting and just a caricature of a dishonest and just strange person, before we get to that, it is wild to think in the span, I think I said this recently, the span of his life that he's had, he can fit in this many dishonest ploys and scams to run. In this situation, setting up a fake name that he would go by because he felt that he could raise more money from Jewish people if he had a Jewish sounding last name. Nothing about him is honest. And I get that there are people out there who are really dishonest, but to have set up so many past things that can be exposed like this, as someone who's not really that old, is really hard to imagine. Every single week he must have been working on a new thing that he later could get exposed for. Stunning. Next part of this interview. Take a look.
Main thing that really kind of irked me was when I went to visit him in his Flushing home in 2018. I came for a few days, and when I got back to Boston, I noticed a Burberry shirt and a Burberry scarf were missing. And I mean, I lose things all the time. I'm terrible. But the Burberry scarf, I think the reason why it bothered me so much was because my best friend Danielle had given it to me on the anniversary of my grandfather's passing. And it was more of a sentimental value than, a materialistic value.
I understand he was actually wearing something he took from you at a pre-January 6th rally in Washington? Is that the scarf? Yes, you can
believe this. He has the audacity, yes.
Wait a minute. He's wearing the scarf.
A stolen scarf to a steal the election rally. You have to love the irony. And the audacity, quite frankly. I mean, wow. I wish I had that much audacity.
So when you saw...
No, sir, you do not wish you were anything like George Santos or Anthony Zabrowski or Anthony Santos George DeVolder or DeVolder George Anthony Zabrowski Santos or whatever the heck his actual name is. So in that situation, another just caricature of a bad person is taking the scarf that has sentimental value tied to this man's grandmother and then wearing it when you're going to be on camera at the Stop the Steal rally. It just doesn't stop with George Santos. And you know what's the saddest part? I think, number one, the saddest part we'll get to, and that's number two, but number one, it's just strange and noteworthy for me to observe someone who has lived this life, been this dishonest. And obviously him being a congressman makes that even more fascinating. But what's the saddest part is the Republican Party is putting up with it. Kevin McCarthy is covering for George Santos. Matt Gaetz, in an interview with George Santos, is saying, listen, if you took everyone off their committees who embellished their resumes, there wouldn't be anybody on committees in Congress. And that shows you who Matt Gaetz hangs around. But these aren't embellishments. These aren't, and I'll keep going back to this example, this isn't, I worked at a certain company for 8 years, but on my resume I said 10 years, a decade, just sound cleaner. That's an embellishment. Completely making up a fake character of a person to pretend is you is way beyond embellishments. It's lying, and it's pathological lying with someone like George Santos. And so the saddest part is Kevin McCarthy, so many in the Republican Party are not standing against George Santos, are not pushing for him to resign. And that shows you the character of the modern Republican Party better than anything else. I would say, do not forget, it is so helpful to the channel, to my soul, to my happiness, if you subscribe to the channel. You might just get the video suggested because YouTube does that if you watch my videos, but just make sure you're also subscribed, even if you don't want it, just for the love of the show. Thank you so much. Subscribe is right below.